there and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. Come along with our triumvirate of terror as we descend into darkness, hurtle into horror, and plunge into peril. If the creatures attacking you follow a strict time schedule, you're in the right place. I'm Justin, and like Miki Matsubara, stay with me.
Nice. I'm Nico, and I've lived in the sticks once, and I'm never doing it again.
I'm Dan, and I guess I'm that city boy from not really Miami, but I'm the city boy.
And we're here today to review After Midnight. Directed by Jeremy Gardner and Christian Stella, this stars Jeremy Gardner as Hank, Henry Zabrowski as Wade, Bria Grant as Abby, Justin Benson as Shane, and Keith Arbuthnot as the creature. So, we open with a young couple, Hank and Abby. The two are very much in love, and we get to see a couple scenes of them, being in love and everything's great. But then, everything changes. No Fire Nation attack, though. You see, the scene warps, changes, and we see Hank, older now, being attacked by an unseen creature while he sits behind a barricaded front door. He fires a shot through the front door, and the creature lets loose a noise and then disappears. Nico, you're going to have to explain something to me. What's going on here?
So the next morning, Hank groggily wakes up, surrounded by empty beer bottles. He goes to check the mail and ends up shooting his gun at a car that drives way too close to him. We then learn that Abby, the love of his life, is gone. She left without a single word to him, leaving only a note. And that was almost 4 weeks ago. The local sheriff, Shane, who is also Abby's brother, asks Hank about the shooting, but also inquires as to Hank and Abby's relationship, saying that they've been together for about, 10 years and maybe she just got tired of waiting around.
Well, one guy who never gets tired of waiting is Dan. What happens next?
That's sad.
I don't know about that, Justin.
Okay.
So from here, the movie almost enters a cycle. During the day, Hank tries to go about his everyday life while reliving memories of Abby and what their relationship used to be. At night, he fights off the monster, although nobody actually believes him. His best friend Wade theorizes it could be a, radioactive kitten, or possibly even aliens. Hank discloses to him that Abby left, and Wayne gives him a hug like a good bro.
A good bro indeed, Dan. A good bro indeed. This goes on for some time, but eventually the creature attacks, and Hank gets a direct look at it as it devours Abby's cat. The next day, to Hank's surprise, Abby actually comes home. They have a conversation, and Abby reveals that she was 4 hours away in Miami. She's tired of their life in the small town they live in. She feels like nothing gives her purpose, and she feels that Hank doesn't love her like he used to. Despite everything Hank has said, the monster does not show up, and the two of them just go to sleep. And I guess we got to turn to our sleep expert here, Nico. What happens next?
It's your boy, the sleep expert. You should definitely drink more water and turn off all your devices and electronics and not look at screens for a solid 1 to 2 hours before you get to your, beddy bye time. Anyway, back to the movie though. So the following day, they hold a celebration for Abby's 34th birthday. Shane and Wade, along with 1 or 2 others, show up for the celebration. And during said celebration, Shane brings up Hank's erratic behavior over the last month and disparages his claim about the monster. Hank fires back that Shane is wrong, but he admits that Abby was right and he should have been better to her. He says that he's willing to sell the house and move wherever Abby wants, because she is enough for him.
Well, Dan, you're enough for this podcast, so why don't you go ahead and close this one out?
To emphasize the point, Hank pulls out his karaoke machine and gives a moving rendition of Lisa Loeb's Stay. He doesn't finish the song because, just then, the monster shows up and fucking attacks. Everyone panics, but Hank grabs the antlers from a preserved deer head and kills the monster with them in a very brutal way. After killing the monster, he gets on one knee and proposes to Abby. The end.
Well, we got a lot to talk about, so let's go ahead and break it down, shall we? First off, Nico, sounds. How's this film sound to you?
Well, speaking of sound, I just want to say this is basically a gender-bent Journey's Don't Stop Believing.
Is it really?
Just a city Chicago.
Oh my fucking god.
Just a small town boy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that. But one thing I will say is that I really am a big fan of the instrumentation and specifically how the arrangement for a few of the scenes really play with chords more than anything. For example, my favorite scene, this is early, I realize, but like my favorite scene in the movie is right after, it's about halfway through, right after Hank gets a good shot at the creature for the first time and finally sees it, and he has to take his time and just rebuild his little sanctuary by the front door where he's camping out with his couch and everything. And what they did in that scene, it's a pretty like lengthy scene for what it is, but they have just a really soft synth outlining a C major 7 chord and then adding on other degrees, making it sort of sound more sad and minor at times with these extensions during times when he's like feeling frustrated, and then towards the end making it a little bit more happy sounding with other it's really well done. It's really, really, really well done.
Indeed. Dan, what'd you hear from this movie?
I liked the musical choice. A lot of the songs that they chose to put in the movie was fit perfectly. So I actually really liked the musical direction.
Absolutely. I think there were literal scenes where, and I watched this movie with captions just cuz, but
As you should.
the literal lyrics were exactly describing what was going on. Because at one point in time when Abby was gone, there was a song playing about leaving this town. And then when Abby shows up, Hank's playing a song about, I wish you'd stay. That was pretty good, I thought. In terms of looks, Dan, how'd this movie look to you?
Oh, it looked pretty good. Some of the camera work I was on and off about. There are some shots that I really liked and some others that almost, this is going to sound harsher than I mean it to be, but it almost made the film look amateurish. But I particularly liked the scene after Abby comes home and they're sitting in the front of the house, sort of waiting for the monster. And that's when they have their deep conversation about everything. The camera very, very slowly pans in, and it only pans in maybe 6 inches or something. Like if it was in real life, the camera may have moved forward 6 inches or zoomed in about that much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's over the course of 5 minutes or something, or 2 minutes or whatever. So it's a very slow pan, but I actually really liked it, and I thought it emphasized that scene quite a bit. So mostly I liked the look and the direction, but occasionally there were scenes where I thought were a little off.
I agree. And Dan, even more so about that one scene you just described, I thought it was also very good that there were no cuts.
Mhm.
It's just framed and there it is. And I know how difficult that can be to do to get everything good. Because I mean, that scene goes for right about 5 minutes or so. And that's honestly pretty impressive, in my opinion. But I want to turn to our friend Nico here. How'd the monster look to you?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was significantly like more, I don't know if insectoid is the right word for it, but like the way that its face is organized combined with just the way that it sort of like moves really quickly and erratically, like that was definitely a vibe, but I also really like how it just sounds so incredibly fucking menacing with all the like almost they compare it to a bear a lot, the other characters in the movie, or they say that it is just like straight up a bear whenever Hank is like, no, it's, trust me, it's not, but like that's kind of what I inevitably compare it to. It's like a bear on audio steroids.
Well, wouldn't be the first bear we've seen on steroids on this podcast. But fair enough. Fair enough. I'm thinking of Annihilation, the bear.
Oh,
Yeah, true.
sure.
So I've got a couple just roundtable discussion questions to start with. And the first is maybe simple, maybe not. Why is this movie called After Midnight? Why do you think?
So I think, and this is kind of going to spoil probably the next question you're going to ask,
Mhm.
but I think it's called After Midnight because I'm assuming the monster comes sometime after midnight. It definitely comes at night. It's never really
Yes.
clear like what time or whatever it comes. But nighttime, I think one of the main themes of this film is loneliness, and it's a lot easier to be lonely like at night, I guess. Because during
Yes.
the day, Hank goes about his regular day-to-day business, and of course he is lonely and depressed and things during the day too, but he has things to fill in that time. But after midnight or at night is when he's all alone and those thoughts come out, and that's when the monster comes out. So that's kind of my thoughts on why it's called After Midnight.
Agreed. I tend to agree with you. Nico, I want to throw something new into the mix when I ask you this question. The original title of this movie, and I think it actually might have premiered at some film festivals under this name, not sure, was Something Else. So I have to ask, do you think the name of Something Else evokes a different response from you? And of the two titles, which do you prefer?
I think I prefer After Midnight just because Something Else is quite possibly the most vague two words I've
True
ever
enough.
heard in my entire goddamn life. Like, what the fuck are we supposed to expect here? But like, at least After Midnight gives us some sort of little hook to latch onto there. It's like, why is it called that? What happens? And then just through the editing, when we get the like snapbacks from like midnight to day, or maybe not midnight, but just like the evening to day. It's just like, it's very cyclical, and I get that is linear nature of time and all that, but like just to say that the style in which this was edited was, I think, intentional to portray the difference between how his life is during the day and in the night, just the terrors that he faces.
And I guess as kind of a follow-up to that, I want to ask, what does the monster symbolize? And Dan, you kind of already talked about it. There's a little bit of loneliness there and isolation. I think the monster also symbolizes, I don't know one specific word, so it's a sentence for me, but there is a part and parts to every relationship that people have where there's a lot of
rose has its
Yeah.
thorn.
There's what people can see from the outside and then what people can see from the inside. And there's truth to the fact that sometimes an outside look at a relationship is more clear than maybe someone in the relationship. But the opposite can also be true, that sometimes you might be seeing things or you might be going through something that everyone else doubts, even though it's real. And the monster shows up literally when Abby goes. That's when it goes. And whether or not the creature targets Hank because he's alone, he lives in that big house by himself, not sure. But I think that's what the monster really represents, to me, at least. Nico, you want to take a stab at it?
I like the monster. I wish we saw more of it. That's my biggest complaint for this film. Like, it's a really cool design. I think the way it's implemented is sufficiently creepy, and they build up a lot of, tense moments across the film. I just wish we saw it more than like literally twice.
I mean, that's certainly fair, but maybe this plays into this point. Dan, did you ever think the monster maybe wasn't real?
No, I always thought the monster was real. But one thing to Nico's question, I guess, something I just thought about is, and kind of combining what Justin was saying a little bit too, is, a lot of times depression and loneliness and stuff is sort of like secret or hidden. Like you don't know what somebody's going through and whatever. So like, Abby had been gone for 4 weeks, but really, I think only Hank was the one who knew, or not Hank. Shane was the only one who knew, and that's because they're related, right? So I think we don't get to see the monster because probably most people don't even know that Hank is lonely or depressed or going through this kind of stuff. And then at the end,
Maybe, yeah.
he sort of spills the beans and he kind of talks about it a little bit. And then that's when everybody sees the monster and confirms that the monster is actually real after he didn't quite admit the problems, but like sort of,
Yes.
and expose that side of things. So I think even that is thematic as well.
That's
As soon
fair.
as you
That's
said
pretty.
spill your beans, Willem Dafoe from The Lighthouse started just echoing in my mind. Why'd you spill your beans, boy?
Fair. Now, as a just quick question, we ask this oftentimes on the podcast, but what genre would you put this in? Because I've seen this described as part creature feature, part romance, part horror. Is this more romance than horror to you?
So on Tubi it's listed as horror/drama, and that's what I'm gonna call it, with much more drama than horror. Like a good half, if not more, of this movie is centered on the relationship between our two lovebirds here. And I think they do a really great job with portraying the two of them. They act their asses off, and I was very convinced that they are actual people. And honestly, I was pleasantly surprised with the sort of wholesome ending that we got, where immediately after, activating your Wolverine special attack in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on a motherfucker, going, by the way, will you marry me and we'll get out of this town finally for real? Like, insert your own pop punk lyrics here, I guess.
I loved how he asked her that, you want to drink another case of this shit with me? And I was like, that was kind of touching. Dan, do you agree on the drama part? It's horror drama to you?
I'd say it's drama. I don't really think it's horror. I think
Interesting.
horror seems to be the only genre that I can think of that if there's 2% horror, it's labeled as horror. Because there's plenty of movies that have comedy in it, some comedic elements, but they're not labeled as comedy, right? There's plenty of, most movies have some element of drama, but they're not defined as the drama thing. There's action in a lot of movies that aren't ever defined as action movies, right? So I just feel like it's not, to me, it's not horror. The musical choices are not horrific at all.
No.
The visuals aren't particularly horrific.
No.
There's a monster, and there's one or two parts that are a little tense with the monster, but I see that as more of a backdrop or carrier of the drama and the theme and everything. So I kind of don't really think it's horror, but if I had to place it in the horror genre,
Ooh.
you already know where I'm going. It would be prestige horror.
Believe it or not, that was my question that I was trying to get at here. Nico, is this prestige horror?
I would have put it
bitch.
as a creature feature.
Boy,
Because it's a creature, and this is a feature.
Yeah, but I don't know, just because there's a creature that we see for 1 minute doesn't.
I mean, it's the focus of the movie is how the creature, both metaphorically and literally, is impacting Hank's life. So,
a creature feature to me is like Sharktopus or something where.
Oh, that's certainly a wackier creature feature, but I mean, we can have like there's sliding scales to this.
Okay. I guess from my perspective, I agree with Dan a million bajillion %. When I watched this for the first time, I watched it during one of the spooktaculars, I forget which. And I remember thinking to myself, this is one of those movies that I consider to be horror adjacent without being super, super horror. And listening to what Dan said, it's pretty convincing. I mean, I've seen films that had fight scenes in them, but they're not action movies just because you have a fight scene in them. Yes, the monster is there, but to me, the point of the movie is more, this is one of those where the monster could have been symbolic. And I'm glad it wasn't. I'm glad there was an actual monster, because I probably would have hated this movie if it was symbolic. But I think that overall, this movie, the way that it's lined up, it's not trying to scare you. And
it
that's
doesn't
what I
really read as prestige horror to me, though. Like, it's not that his loneliness is the monster, it's that he's lonely and there also is a monster.
But does the loneliness have to be the monster for it to be prestige horror?
Well, no, but oftentimes it would be, I would think. Like, some way, it would be like almost an entity, whether or not physical. It would be just like, I feel like it would have to be more of a significant, almost characteristic of everything else. and I just didn't get enough of those vibes personally. I see what you're getting at, though. I do. I really do. I wasn't picking up all of like those particular readings when I was watching it.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't pretentious enough. The pot is split. The forces of righteousness and justice say maybe it's prestige horror. The forces of hoe craftery and such say no. No,
Hey,
it
I will
isn't.
take hoe craftery over justice every single time.
All right,
Because, like,
all right.
let's think back to the real world, baby. Is there a lot of justice there? Sure fucking isn't. So let's pile on the alternative, which I guess is sex and magic. So I'm not fucking complaining.
All right. Hoe craftery is actually short for horticulture craftery. So I hope you're willing to grow a bunch of plants.
You already know, boss.
I already know.
I know a thing or two about germinating seeds.
Well, speaking of what you said before,
No overnight Amazon, though.
how do you guys feel about Hank and Abby's relationship? Dan, I got a couple questions for you. Got a couple questions for Nico. First and foremost, how'd you feel about Abby just packing up and leaving? She gave her reasons. How'd you feel about her just packing up and leaving?
I think it was dumb or she was dumb because, well, let me backtrack. I can understand where she's coming from, and maybe we just didn't see this, but over the course of 10 years, I would like to think that there would have been some conversations that would have been had.
You would think.
She does mention that she went to a reunion, like a school reunion or
Yes.
something, and that she had mentioned that to him, but he didn't really care. But I would like to think that before my significant other of 10 years just disappears for a month with very little explanation, that we would have had conversations as to why she was unhappy in the relationship. Um, and I also feel like when she was explaining that to him, it was both ways. I think she was explaining, I think they were probably both guilty of those same kind of things.
Certainly, yeah.
So I feel like they might not have had the best relationship.
What were the clues?
Yeah.
Nico, how do you feel about Hank as someone in the relationship, given that we especially see a lot from his perspective and how he very clearly deeply loves her and misses her, and he can't stop thinking about the good times in their relationship? How does that make you feel about him?
Honestly, like, I'm kind of happy for him. I don't know. This has just some real feel-good vibes, and like it's nice to see a win for once. It felt genuine when he was giving his sort of monologue at the end about how he's been an asshole recently, and even, you know, like beyond recently. And it seemed like she felt his sincerity there, and just like, I don't know, the two of them have a lot of chemistry, and I think that they were the best part of the movie. So I honestly was a fan of how everything turned out for them, as cheesy as it is.
Well, that's really good considering they are the movie. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that they were the best part of the movie.
I mean, hey.
Also, I do want to ask, and this is a little side note here from Dan, who might have been sipping some haterade at the time. Dan, Hank sleeps in a pretty interesting place. Elaborate on that for us, please.
Yeah, so he sleeps on the couch, which, hey, I
Yeah.
do that occasionally too.
Mhm.
But he had pushed the couch up against the door, right?
Right.
To block it so the monster doesn't come in. And at the beginning of the movie, we see him shoot a hole through the door.
Mhm.
So he sleeps with his head about a foot away from a big ass hole in the door that a monster tries to attack. And I feel like that's not a very smart idea.
You
Especially
know,
considering at one point the monster starts reaching through the hole, and luckily he wakes up. But you could have picked some better place to sleep there, buddy.
Yeah, he had a whole house.
Even like across the room, so he's still looking at the door or some shit. I don't know, but come on, man.
The funniest part is when you look at the rest of the house, it's like he hadn't touched it or wanted to be in it. Aside from the kitchen, which there's beer bottles in the kitchen too, because he sometimes goes in there, there's other parts of the house that are just totally untouched that he hadn't been in. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it's almost like his life kind of paused without her. Like he was just there in a holding pattern, which plays into everything else. Now, I want to ask real quick, Nico, you've already elaborated on your favorite scene.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, did you have a favorite scene in the film?
I think my favorite scene is near the beginning-ish when he's at the bar with Wade, his friend, and fucking Wade
Oh
gets
no, the
like
gorilla fart.
the way
Oh,
the way he gets like a free drink from the bar is like the drink mat. They pour him a shot of just the spillage from the
drink
drink mat.
leavings.
Yeah. And that was kind of gross. But I just liked sort of the banter that goes along with it and everything. I thought that was a fun time. And I think Wade was my favorite scene. Just any scene Wade was in. And when he's talking about like the cat, how the fucking cat could like do this kind of shit, or like maybe it's aliens and stuff like that. And when Hank tells him that Abby left, he's like, "Oh man, here I've been talking about fucking cats, kittens and aliens, man. I'm sorry." I don't know. His scenes are some of my favorite.
I agree. I thought Wade was a total bro because he went with his guy into the fucking woods, jungle forest, and he was like, "Did you bring your rifle?" Nah. So he just goes out there with a fucking axe. And he
He's a
tells me
real
ahead of
one.
time, he's like, "If a fucking alien jumps off from behind these bushes, I'm going to have like a mental breakdown. Just letting you know right now." I thought that was pretty funny. My favorite scene in the movie is the scene that Dan had talked about when we talked about the visuals. And it's just the two of them having possibly one of the realest conversations I've ever seen committed to film. I have many ulterior motives for being as into this movie as I am. This is one of those movies that fits just so well within the context of my life that, I mean, I am Hank for a big chunk of what happens to Hank. And that conversation they have about, you've got everything you want in this small town. I want more. I want the world. I want this. I want that. And the concept of being enough for someone else. Like that's just pew, in my cold dead heart. So yeah, that's probably my favorite scene.
Critical hit to Justin.
More than that. But
Fatality.
I want to ask now. I said I was Hank, but really, we all are Hank. For the
Hmm.
what would you do that is.
Oh no.
So I'm going to put you in Hank's
Here's what I
shoes.
would do. I would put the fucking shotgun away when I was talking to my like fiance to be during that heartfelt ass moment. That's what I would have goddamn done. Like, dude is like reloading in the middle of this conversation. Like, can you chill? Can you just like put it up against the wall, please? And it took him 10 minutes to do that.
To be fair, I think he wasn't even like super, like, I don't think he was doing it to be in like a threatening way or anything like that.
Oh, I believe that. I still just, man, that bothered me.
I mean, there was also a monster that he was expecting to come kill him.
No, I get that.
And I think he even, because when he thinks about it and he realized, like, when she talks to him at first, he's just like angry. And so he's not listening.
Mhm.
And that's when he starts like fidgeting with the gun. Like he fidgets with the reload chamber, with the, no, I forget what it's called. When you go like this.
Yeah, I call that the hanky.
Yeah. And he's fidgeting with it a little bit. And then when he realizes, he actually does put it down when
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, nah, babe, come on." Like, and they start talking. So I get that piece. But aside from that, you're in Hank's shoes, your girl's gone, and there's a monster that beats down your door every night. How would you take out the monster?
I would remember how a camera works after fidgeting with it for more than like a fucking second. Like, he has a little like handheld camcorder type joint, but Presumably, he also has a phone, so like he just gave up on that real fucking quick. Is all I'm saying. Like, what I would have done is I would have put more sincere effort into getting actual photographic evidence of it during these encounters.
To
I don't
then
think he did have a phone. I mean, he has a landline phone, and they're in the boonies, so they probably don't have like a smartphone and shit.
I just find it hard to believe that an adult in the year of our Lord 2020X wouldn't have a smartphone at this point.
I literally work with about 500 people who don't own smartphones,
That's fair.
and they live in New York City.
I mean, okay, all right, that's fair.
I will say, to your credit, Nico, even if he didn't have a phone, he did have that camera,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he could
for
have
sure.
he could have tried harder to take a picture, or even potentially, I don't know, gotten a camera, like something he could have put up, like a surveillance joint or something.
Certainly.
Yeah, I
That's a
like
fair
that
point.
it took him 4 weeks to go. Oh, I have a bear trap. Maybe I should put that out.
Yeah, right.
I would say that for me, I would call up my buddy fucking Wade and have him spend a night or two with me. So that
Yeah.
way there's evidence. I got like someone else to be like, nah, he's not tripping. There's definitely something attacking him. I don't know again if the monster would have left him alone, because it leaves him alone when he's with Abby, but then it attacks him when he's in the whole group. So I don't know if being alone even really matters, but definitely I would have tried getting support from a comrade. To
Wasn't
help
it
me out.
darker when he was with the full group?
Unsure.
I don't know.
Unsure.
Maybe.
Because they talk about staying up till 12:30.
Yeah.
Dan, how are you dealing with this beast?
I think I would just shoot it. I mean, I know that he tries once or twice, but you got a shotgun. I would just shoot it multiple times. Bear trap. I would just, go nuts to butts and just shoot it.
Can I also say really quick that running out after it in the pitch black middle of the fucking night where you can't see shit is like the dumbest fucking
Yeah.
idea I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is.
Like, dude lost all sympathy with me as soon as that fucking happened. Like, okay, you don't have a smartphone? Sure, you have a flashlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But he's a hunter and he knows those woods.
He was
Oh, yeah, okay.
the light from his gun going
Yeah.
off.
That's what they call an American flashlight overseas.
Shut the fuck up.
Anyhow,
As a public school teacher, I can confirm this.
well, so I want to go now to the critical review. What do you guys think the critics gave this on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm going to say, like, decently high, like, low to mid 80s.
Give me a number.
Yeah.
I'll say 82 for sake of guessing.
All right.
I have a feeling the critics didn't like it. I'm gonna say they gave it not hated it, a 65.
Nico wins again.
Ah,
Critics lapped this one up. It's certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes,
wow.
sitting at 90%.
Wow.
The audience did not like this movie. It's rotten at a 47%.
Ooh.
Wow.
An ocean between us. The words have never been truer.
I wonder what they didn't like about it.
Except when they have. Either way, I want to get your opinion. What do you think about this movie?
I'll go first. I had a really good time with this. I like the monster design. I like the characters. I like the way that they develop over time. And there is actual character growth in this. It's not just people in a movie and nothing really happens that changes them. I think the music is really, really good. And even though I wish there was more of the monster, I still am just a really big fan of this. The only thing that I didn't like, aside from the, like, not as much monster, is, like, nobody in this movie can fucking sing. But I'm giving this an 84.
Okay. Dan?
I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was great. I do think that there are some parts that are maybe a little rough around the edges. I don't know what their budget was, but I don't see it being a big budget film. I would imagine if they had a larger budget, those rough around the edges parts wouldn't be so rough. I think that the concept of the film and the ideas and everything were fantastic. I'm gonna right there with Nico, 84.
So I'm going to say this. I fucking love this movie. This movie is one of my actual personal favorite films of just all time.
Cue the sad piano.
Yeah, pretty much. Cue the super sad piano. I mean,
Speak on it.
I relate so much to Hank, except imagine if the girl never came back, and that's me. So that pretty much, like, every time I see that scene, it like rips my heart out, and then it puts like a little Band-Aid on it, because Hank got his happy ending. When he proposes to her with the wine bottle, I'm like, oh gosh. So I fucking love this movie. I know that it's clearly not super high budget. It does have, at certain moments in times where you can feel that. And I fully admit that my opinion here is super biased. And if I wasn't Hank in my life in some circumstances, I might rate it a little bit lower. But for me, I'm going to give this one a 95. I fucking adore this film. I really do.
Wow.
But is this going to get the almighty recommendation from DOTD?
Absolutely.
No. Yeah, it will. I'm just fucking with you.
Absolutely, yes. The real question here is this Golden Seal worthy? And I think I know the answer, but hit me with it.
Not to me.
Also not to me.
That's what I thought. I thought this would not get the Golden Seal, but this is an independent. Would you consider it for Diamond in the Rough?
I think
I would say so. I just, like, the only hesitation is, like, I don't know how big the budget was exactly, but, like, I would give it to it, yeah. Like, what is the cutoff for Diamond
Well,
in
that's
the
the
Rough?
thing. I couldn't find any hard numbers, but I saw that it was pretty much self-distributed.
Okay. Then yeah, sure.
What's the sound again for the Diamond in the Rough?
You change it every time.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's the Diamond in the Rough sound. This one gets the recommendation, doesn't get the Golden Seal, but does get the Diamond in the Rough. But I really want to hear what you've got to say, dear listener. So hit us up.
Really wanna stay your hand.
Yes, all that. We're on X and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. Plus, you can check everything we've done on our website, which is dotdhorror.com. And if you're feeling extra generous, tell a friend about us. Give us a positive review. It helps. Helps get the message out. And helps tell everyone about my heartbreak. And people can laugh.
Man.
But till next time, dear listener, if you have to, a Ring camera could have solved a lot of shit. So think about, like, shit you can put around your home to keep you safe.
Keep Justin in your thoughts.
In fact, this episode is probably going to come out right next to my birthday. Even more poignant.
When you want to say a new house?
And as always, dear listener, don't open that door and don't cry for me, Argentina. Bye.
Very good.